Ever wonder why feedback can either feel like a gift or a gut punch? Let's chat about the science behind it and what happens with your brain when receiving feedback. Welcome to Paradigm Shifts with your host, Keisha Kruger. As an organization development practitioner and executive coach, I work with leaders to create positive changes in the workplace using behavioral science. And here, we're on a mission to rethink the way we work, lead, and ultimately live. So, let's unpack light bulb moments for paradigm shifts within your workplace and beyond. Are you ready for a shift? Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Paradigm Shifts podcast. Today, we are diving into the fascinating world of neuroscience and its implications on feedback within our organizations. I remember once during a performance review earlier on in my career, feeling an overwhelming mix of anticipation and anxiety when I received some feedback. And it was a pivotal moment that taught me about the power of feedback because it wasn't about what was said, it was about how it was delivered. And that experience really has had me interested ever since and curious about the science of feedback. And that's all today's topic is about. So in the life of a manager or a leader, inevitably we have to have these difficult conversations, whether it's the matter of an unsubmitted timesheet or let's say a behavior of someone on your team that disrupts the harmony of the team. Every manager, irrespective of their experience, will face moments that will test their feedback delivery. And the real crux lies in not avoiding these tough talks, but really in reimagining them as vital growth opportunities, reframing them as growth opportunities. Picture this. Without clear, regular feedback, how would an employee truly realize their areas of shortfall? They just simply wouldn't. In the absence of that critical communication, not only does the employee's potential for growth stagnate, but a manager might also find themselves in a cycle of frustration because they have a lot of unmet expectations. And when you neglect to provide quality feedback that sends an approval of the status quo, it almost enables the employee to do that. And it leaves the employees to script their own narratives and ones that often veer off course from the reality and into some sort of self-assumed confidence or perceived managerial indifference. And we don't want that. So there is a cost to silence. And when stepping back from these conversations is more harm than good, tipping the scales really more heavily towards misunderstanding and overall misled opportunities for improvement. So I want to talk a little bit about the science of feedback first, because the neuroscience of feedback really does unveil why some conversations feel like we're navigating a minefield. So our brains, they are hardwired to perceive threats, and they do this because ancestrally we needed to have this skill, this coping mechanism for survival, but less so for modern day feedback. This is where the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and that really helps blur the line between physical danger and the stress of criticism, often leading to defensive or shutdown responses. When we're in a stressful encounter, the amygdala, part of the brain, really hijacks the brain's rational center, the prefrontal cortex, and it severs access to this part of our brain, which is home to our decision-making and problem-solving capabilities. So think about that. I'm giving you feedback and I want you to think critically and be able to access the part of your brain that makes rational decisions. But instead, the emotional center of our brain, the amygdala, is on and shuts down access here. So when you're it's not an ideal state for processing constructive criticism, right? So I want to talk a little bit about a case study and highlight another organization that has integrated feedback-rich environments. So there's a compelling story with Adobe, a company that many have heard of. They pioneered an innovative approach to feedback by harnessing insights from neuroscience, which is fascinating. They transitioned from traditional annual performance reviews completely to a check-in framework. So they focus more on frequent informal conversations about expectations, feedback, and personal development. And that shift was motivated by neuroscience findings that suggest regular positive feedback strengthens our neural pathways. And that also enhances learning and performance. So the results, Adobe witnessed a significant transformation in its workplace dynamics. In fact, employee satisfaction soared. They also saw a 30% decrease in voluntary turnover, and productivity metrics revealed such a notable improvement. And I love that this example is supported by research. The study conducted by Gallup found that employees who receive daily feedback from their managers are 3 times more likely to be engaged at work compared to those who receive feedback once a year. That study was conducted by J.K. Harder, F.L. Schmidt, and T.L. Hayes in 2002. So I think Adobe's success story really does exemplify and demonstrate the powerful impact of aligning feedback mechanisms with the underlying principles of the neuroscience, and really helps us understand how the brain's wiring can lead to more effective motivational and positive work environments. So let's talk a little bit about how we circumvent our hardwired responses to make feedback sessions more productive. And here are a few neuroscience-backed strategies. Number 1, regular real-time feedback. Cultivate a feedback-rich culture to normalize both giving and receiving feedback. Make it expected, routine practice rather than an exceptional or dreaded event. Second, immediate scheduling. For critical feedback to be effective, timing is everything. Schedule sessions promptly and be transparent about the agenda to minimize anxiety and speculation. 3, warm up to the event. So you want to start with context. A soft opener can prepare the employee to receive feedback in a constructive frame of mind. 4, reinforce psychological safety. Make sure that the employee feels valued and safe to express themselves long before you're giving them feedback. Having a psychological safe environment really does encourage open dialogue and receptivity to feedback. 5, focus on actions, not attributes. Attribute feedback to behaviors and their impacts rather than an individual's personal traits. And I love aligning feedback with the situation, behavior, impact, SBI model for structured, clear communication. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So as managers, the choice to engage in these conversations can really help redefine, course correct an employee's trajectory. And I think that is pivotal for growth and understanding. So I would say reflect on the conversations that you've been avoiding. How can they be reframed as opportunities for development? What steps can you take to ensure that feedback is not just delivered, but received in the spirit of growth? I do think that that's something that lies with the manager, but also at the organization company-wide. So now let's talk about the SBI model, because I think this is a really practical tool that you can use to structure feedback in a way that's constructive, clear, and concise to professional growth. And the SBI model, for short, it encourages a focused conversation on specific instances, behaviors, their outcomes, and really steers clear of vague criticisms and personal judgments. And I will say personally, I've used this outside of the workplace. I've used this in my personal relationships. I've used this in my friendships. And I think it goes a long way because it's very structured model, but also it backs it up with what you're trying to say. Okay, so the SBI model, let's take a closer look. So S stands for situation, and this is all about pinpointing the exact occasion or context where the behavior occurred, and this grounds the conversation in reality, providing a clear reference point for both people. So here's an example. Let's talk about the team meeting we had on Tuesday morning. B in SBI stands for behavior. And so this is all about describing the specific behavior that you observed. Now we're only sticking to facts, observable actions. We're not inferring intent or making personal judgments. It's really important here. If you have not observed the behavior yourself, it's really a different approach that you want to take. We do not want to triangulate, right? So I am a huge fan of just sticking to behaviors that you have observed personally. So an example of behavior is during the meeting when we were discussing project timelines, I noticed You interrupted several colleagues while they were explaining their progress and concerns. So that's an example of behavior, something that you notice. And then the I in SBI model stands for impact. And this is all about explaining the effect of this behavior on you, the team, the project, or the organization. And the impact really should highlight why the behavior is significant and worth addressing. Here's an example. The interruptions made it difficult for the team to fully convey their ideas and concerns, and that led to some frustration and confusion. It also did prolong our meeting, affecting our time management for the day. Now, once you put it all together, that is a really effective way to deliver feedback, situation, behavior, and impact. And so I'm going to just go through a script template that'll help you maybe script out some feedback that you have. So starting with sharing the employee's name. Hey, do you have a moment to talk about situation? I wanted to discuss behavior that I observed during situation. It seemed to have impact, and I wanted to hear your perspective on it. I believe addressing this can help us improve aspect of teamwork or team dynamic. And I'm here to support you in making these adjustments. What are your thoughts? The SBI model isn't just about providing feedback, but it's opening a dialogue for growth and understanding. So after you present that feedback using the SBI model, encourage your employee to share their viewpoint. Ask what their intention was. Follow up, right? Did I get that right? Can you share more about that? And this conversation is a two-way street so that there's a mutual understanding. And when you structure feedback this way, we make our intentions clear, but we also foster an environment where feedback is seen as learning and development tools rather than criticism. So I challenge each of you to reflect on your feedback practices this week. Focus on delivering at least one of constructive feedback that acknowledges effort and potential, not just outcomes. Notice the difference that it makes in your interactions. Try out the SBI model and see if you're having a difficult conversation, how does someone open up using this model? Today, we are only scratching the surface of the neuroscience of feedback, but I hope it inspires you to think differently about your feedback strategies. Next time, we will explore another fascinating topic that promises to shift our paradigms. Until then, keep learning, leading, and transforming. Thank you for tuning in.